Right before I started working on this video, the strangest thing has happened with this Christopher Ward watch. In this video I want to compare these two similar watches. The Rolex Explorer II 16570 Polar and the Christopher Ward C63 Sealander GMT Polar. This Rolex Explorer II was one of my long-awaited grail Rolexes of all time. And this is my favorite watch in the collection. This watch is from 2022. Which means the watch is quite old and can be considered as new vintage. I think that the Rolex Explorer II, the previous and the current model are one of the best sports watches with a wide dial ever made. This Christopher Ward C63 Sealander GMT clearly draws the inspiration from that 16570 Rolex model, but also brings some differences in dial and case design and to the specs as well. I have to mention that I have the older model with the older Christopher Ward written logo. The modern version has only symbol as a logo. Before working on this video, I had the Christopher Ward watch on my wrist for a day, and the strangest thing happened to the watch that left me quite perplexed. I will tell you about this issue later in the video. The Christopher Ward C63 Sealander GMT is also a very good looking watch and a solid value proposition from the popular watch brand from England. Christopher Ward is on the fire in recent years. They made many great looking watches, but they introducing new watches so fast that I can't keep up with the novelties from the brand. So let's compare them side by side to find out if the Christopher Ward is able to scratch that itch for the Rolex Explorer II, or maybe it just can be considered as a very good watch with no connection to the popular Rolex model. As you can see, the design has many similarities, and as I said, Christopher Ward is clearly draws the inspiration from Rolex here. There's actually another model from Grand Seiko that has similar inspired by Rolex design. I think that the Christopher Ward design play is fair. It is inspired but not a straight Rolex ripoff. The fixed 24 hours bezel design is different, it's slimmer, and that gives the watch a different look. The case invariability. The case design is also different. It's not the Rolex standard oyster case. Christopher Ward case is nice and complex enough with brushed and polished parts and good ergonomic in mind. Because of the curved back case, the 39mm case sits very comfortably on my 17cm wrist. The Rolex case design is different. The back case is popping out, but the watch is still incredibly comfortable on my wrist. In fact, it's one of my most comfortable watches to wear. With Rolex's stated 40mm case size, it looks slimmer and smaller on the wrist compared to Sealander. When I was measuring the Rolex case, it showed about 39mm of the case diameter. The Rolex case is 12mm in thickness and 47mm lug to lug. The Sealander is also 12mm thick and 45.6mm lug to lug. The dial. The Christopher Ward is definitely has less text on the dial. It's Christopher Ward automatic GMT 150 meters / 500 feet Swiss made. With Rolex Explorer II you have crown logo, Rolex, Oyster perpetual date, Explorer II, superlative chronometer, officially certified, Swiss made. Whew, that's a lot, but still works great. With Rolex you get a date function at 3 o'clock and a magnifying glass over the date for better readability. I personally like to have Cyclop, but I know that some people can't stand that magnifying feature. There are even some threads online on how to remove it. It also has a flat sapphire crystal. With Christopher Ward you also have a date feature, but at 6 o'clock and no Cyclops. Regular flat sapphire crystal as well. The hands. The GMT hand is red with Rolex and orange with Christopher Ward, as well as the tip of the second hand. Interesting that the modern Rolex Explorer II also has the GMT hand color changed to orange from red. The markers and hands design is also different. You don't see the Rolex's Mercedes hour hand in Sealander. Instead, it is a pointy arrow hand, which I am not particularly big fan of. The second hand of the Sealander, as I said, with the orange edge and the trident symbol. I am not a big fan of the trident either. With Rolex, you have those classic Mercedes white gold hands enameled in black for the contrast. The same goes for the markers. The black coating makes them pop against the white dial very nicely. It delivers a great contrast and readability to the Rolex dial. The Christopher Ward watch has a stainless steel markers and hands, which while not as contrast as the Rolex ones, are still quite readable. The Lume. Speaking of readability, we have to mention Lume. Both watches are with superluminova Lume. Rolex has it in green color and Christopher Ward in a more pleasant blue shade. But the Lume on a Rolex is brighter. It's also worth noting that Rolex used different types of Lume on their Explorer II 16570 models. It could be tritium, luminova or superluminova, depends on the year of the production. What also is worth noticing, I mentioned this from the beginning, that this Rolex model is not in the production anymore. The last year for this particular case design was in 2011. The modern Rolex Explorer II has an updated case and dial design. Also, it got an updated movement. Speaking of the movement, with Rolex you have a very tough, tested by the time, COSC certified Rolex in-house caliber 3185 with GMT function. With Christopher Ward you most likely have a Sellita SW3302 movement, also with GMT function. I will talk more about the GMT differences later. The Christopher Ward model is with the transparent back case, so you can look at the movement. The Rolex back case is closed as the most Rolex back cases. The GMT. So the Rolex model features a so-called true GMT, also known as flyer GMT. The main function is that you can move the hour hand independently. You also can change a date by moving the hour hand. It is a very nice feature for traveling. You just need to adjust the hour hand to your new location time zone. That Christopher Ward model is also features the GMT function, but different. This option called a color GMT. And the best used case scenario is when you need to track another time zone. Let's say you are in Toronto but you need to know what the time is London right now. You can use the orange GMT hand for that. But actually both GMT options can be used for both traveling and tracking another time zone. They just do it differently. I don't travel that much, but I use them both for tracking time in different time zones. So I would know when not to disturb my colleagues in Europe with the work questions. Water resistance. Both watches are made to withstand some tough conditions, including some water activities as swimming. They are not diver watches per se, but still provide confidence at the beach or pool. The Sealander has 115 meters of water resistance, and the Explorer II comes with 100 meters of water resistance. Both watches are with screw-down crown and crown guards. The bracelet. Now is the time to talk about the bracelets on the both watches. Okay, here I can be a little bit biased because I like the older jingly-jangly Rolex bracelets. I also a big fan of Rolex vintage bracelets. So for me the bracelet on my Explorer II is perfect. It is a very simple bracelet, but I love the look and the fit of it a lot. It has a simple push clasp with a safety clutch and a screw pin adjustment system. It also tapers perfectly, and for me it's just perfect. At the same time I understand that this is a very outdated bracelet by the modern standards. The Sealander bracelet has a look, feel and features of a modern bracelet. It is slightly tapered, but I wish it was tapered more. It also has a screw pin adjustment system. Where it shines is the quick release and quick adjustment system, which is always great to have. Now let me tell you what happened to this Christopher Ward watch. It was so unexpected that I could not believe it. I don't like setup watches, so I was keeping this Sealander in my winder running. This morning I took it from a winder and worn it through a half of the day. It was working perfectly, and then it just stopped. With no warning, just out of blue. I discovered it about 15 minutes since the watch stopped. I have no idea what caused this problem, but the watch is dead. I tried to wind it manually as well as shaking it as much as I could, and it didn't work. It's still dead. I have had this watch for more than a year, and it's so weird that this happened right when I was working on this video. What are the odds? I guess I would have to send it to Christopher Ward for a payment, unless I will find a good local watchmaker. So anyway, this is my comparison of the Rolex Explorer II Polar and the Christopher Ward C63 Sealander GMT Polar. In general, I think that the Rolex design is more balanced and put together, but the Sealander has a certain flair as well. But couldn't scratch that itch for the Explorer II. The price difference is pretty big to ignore. They both are very solid watches and could be your great companions through the years. But if you want the Rolex, the Sealander probably wouldn't help you in the long run. You still will be craving for this Rolex. But if you like the design and functionality and you don't really care about brand, or you want the more modern watch, Christopher Ward would be a very good and much more affordable option for you. although it sounds rather silly in the light of the recent development with the watch, and considering that it just stopped out of blue. I will keep you posted, I will keep you updated on the issue for sure. Let me know in the comments what you think about these two watches. Which one would you choose? Which one you like better, considering all the specs and the design? Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you next time. Bye now and take care.